Go and zoom in this one.
Locate.
Yes.
What's wrong with that and click OK. That's good.
Caption. Both sides. Okay, so we are gonna do our lab 5 today, which consists of installing the server role. Keep in mind that when I created the virtual machine for you, I already installed the OS for Windows Server 2019. Installing OS for is very similar to what you see installing OS for other like other Windows version. But you want your server to have a little bit more hardware like storage and RAM because it's servicing multiple clients. So it's ideal that you have that accommodation, right? So drive space like for your SSD or your HDD have to be a little bigger. So what we're gonna do is when you install the server OS, it doesn't have these roles enable or initiated, right? So we are gonna install. So when they say DHCP server, DNS server, these are roles that your physical system can take on. Normally, sometimes we would have multiple roles on one systems, right? So you're gonna start with the DHCP Dynamic Host Control Protocol. It talks about that at the beginning here. We talked about this last time when we talked about IPv4. This is a system that can give out IP addresses based on the scope or the pool that you create. So that way, when I connect a laptop or a desktop to the network, right, this server is going to give it the private IP address that it needs for the network configuration. Okay. So when we set it up, it should contain configuration for the clients, the IP addresses for the clients. We talked about the reserve IP address in the last unit. So we are gonna set up some reserve IP address from that pool for our dedicated systems or whatnot. And then how long do you want the client system to use the IP address for? Okay. So the first thing that you're going to do is you are going to connect the Toshiba drive to your classroom computer, which I have, and you can click on the File Explorer and you would find your Toshiba drive. You can just click on the left under this PC. And on that drive, you would see CIS40A VMs. And this virtual machine, these virtual machines are contained within that folder. So you would navigate from the Toshiba drive, double click the CIS40A VMs. And here, what you're going to do is you are going to drag this folder to your desktop. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with you so that way you can see. So just scroll up on the left. You can just drag this to your desktop. And it's gonna take like about a minute or so to go ahead and copy the folder over. Just like the other virtual machine, you can double click the blue file that's inside the copy folder on the desktop. Or you can mount it through the software. Okay. So I will go through the lab instruction, but if you simply open up your desktop and find the folder that you just dragged, and then double click the blue icon file, you should be able to add that to your playlist and be able to click start, right? But for the lab instruction, once you have added your folder to your desktop, this is where you're going to run your virtual machine. You are going to open up your application. And how did I open this up? I simply search for VirtualBox or virtual. Right. So if you do this at home, two things, right? You have to have VirtualBox installed. You have to have the virtual machine. And some students had asked me if they can, so I'll work on like uploading some of these down the line. The compression for these machines are humongous, so it takes like 30 minutes to compress, and Google Drive is not exactly the fastest, so when I upload it and I'm on fiber at home, it still takes a little bit of time, so I will see if I can share that down the line. Okay, so on your app, it tells you that you are going to click the plus sign or the add. You can also click on machines and be able to select add. So click on add right here or the plus sign, and then go to desktop on the left, right? And the copy folder, which I have here, which is CIS40A server VM. Double click that, double click, I misspelled the server, I know. Double click the folder and then click on the blue icon file and click open. So again, right, I click add, I open the app, VirtualBox, I click add, go to my desktop, go to CIS40A server VM, go to the subfolder and open the blue file. So it's gonna mount that to your playlist, okay? And you don't have to modify anything in the settings for this one. You're just gonna click start, right? Actually, I lied. So you have to change to host only. The reason why is maybe we need to put internal, hold on one second. We don't want to broadcast IP address to the rest of the network through the host. So you're gonna click on settings. And then you can go to network on the left, right? Remember what we talked about NAT, right? So it uses NAT to convert your connection through the host. So what we can do is we are going to change this. Let's select internal network only. Let's do that, right? Because host only, it should still be able to connect. So internal network only. So let me fix that. Okay, so you're gonna do internal network selection. So again, right, I'm gonna go through that step. So once I have my virtual machine added to the list, make sure that I select it on the left. See how it's highlighted here? Click settings, and then go to the network tab on the left, right? Where it says attached to NAT for NAT, you're gonna click the drop down and you would select internal network only. Okay. I know that host only would also work, but host only also allows you to connect through the host. So we're gonna go ahead and click internal network. So basically, this is a server on our own network, and we want to be able to configure these. Yes.
I have internal network on my option.
Um,
It's because he has to add the virtual machine, that's why.
You did add it.
Oh.
Let's try.
I'm trying to get it. Yeah. Okay, I'm done. Open it. Commercial. What is this? Press that. All together with the family. Press it. All right. Is it? Press it. Press it. Press it.
Yeah, we'll just use.
Open.
Actually, what we can do is. Anybody else have that same issue? Oh, okay. So if you don't have, yeah, it could be the adapter that you're on also that you're using. So so make sure that it's adapter 1, right? And then make sure it's internal because don't select adapter 2 or 3. So make sure it's adapter 1. And then if you don't have NAT, if you only have NAT and bridge, it's possible that your adapter for that specific system is set up a certain way, but it should give you the internal network. If not, you can keep it on NAT. The reason why I do this is for safety reasons. It's only because we don't want to broadcast the IP addresses to, their network. But when you restart, sometime that happens. Okay. Okay. Click OK. And then you're gonna go ahead and click start. And it's gonna power up your VM. It's gonna show that this is a non-fatal issue with the software. Just click OK. Now, as you go through later on, you're gonna see that as you add more features and roles to your system, sometimes it does get a little bit longer to load. Normally server, we don't shut it down unless we are changing the configuration and then we're gonna reboot it. So this is why you have to click insert Control Alt Delete is because it is a little bit different functionality than your regular Windows 10, right? So once you see the screensaver for the desktop like this, you're gonna click Input, Keyboard, and then insert Control Alt Delete. This is how you can interact with the software because if you press Control Alt Delete on your keyboard, it's gonna, actually halt everything and then it's gonna go back to the host machine. So we want to try the Control Alt Delete inside the virtual machine, right? So we're gonna go Input, Keyboard, Control Alt Delete, and you should see the login screen once that happens. Ideally. Okay, so the password that you're gonna use is gonna be CIS40A with an exclamation point, and then we are going to talk about Server Manager. So now before it becomes a domain, right? So if I install Server OS, it basically only has the OS, like your regular Windows system. It's gonna default to the administrator account. Okay. Now, Microsoft is gonna try to get you to modify the account, but out of the box, after you install the OS, this is what you're gonna see. Okay, so we're gonna put in our password as indicated on your lab, which is going to be CIS40A with an exclamation point. And there is a lag, so it's normal. All caps CIS40A with an exclamation point. Okay. Now, we shouldn't use the server OS like a regular OS, right? You can, but it has a lot more. So if, because it's 2019 license expired, you see that. But you can, if you need to get an ISO to create your virtual machine, you can go to Microsoft and you can download it. They have instruction for you on how to obtain the ISO, and you can use VirtualBox to make your own virtual machine if you like. Okay, so now here is your desktop information, and what you should see is going to be your server manager. So if you don't see your server manager, unlike your regular desktop, which it takes a bit to load, right? It's always gonna give you the server manager because this is where it wants you to start. Okay, so it's gonna be slow. It's gonna try to load the server manager. And the version that I use is the data center, an evaluation copy. So the difference between the data center and the standard OS for the server is that you actually have a lot more feature to work with. And so this is why the license for the data center is a little bit more. Okay, so be patient with it. It is a virtual machine emulating your server, so it's gonna be a little laggy, right? All right, so once you have the server manager open, it will prompt you this. It says, you know, this is the capability of your admin center. So in all version of server Windows OS, you're gonna see after you install, it's gonna want, this is your starting point, right? So we have to configure a lot of these things through the manager itself. Once you do that, then you are going to have tools added to the top. So unlike your regular Windows 10 desktop, right, your server tools and everything is gonna locate on the top right. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna follow the instruction and it gives you the screenshot. You are gonna click on the local server tab on the left, and you are going to click on the Ethernet option to configure your IP address. This is when you need to put in the IP address, right? That would be just like how you did the static IP with Linux before, right? You want to be unique and you want it to be permanent. Okay, so click on the local server on the left side. Maybe I should have given it a little bit more RAM. But anyway, we will do that next time. And you would see that it has, right now, it has IPv4 assigned by DHCP. We don't want that. We don't want your server to change IP address periodically. We want a permanent IP address, a static IP address that we're going to use forever and ever, right? So we're going to click on local server on the left, and we're going to click on IPv4 address, link. And this is going to take you to the properties of the Ethernet adapter, which is what you've seen in Windows 10, similar. And while it does do that, what you're going to do is you are going to set up your IP address. You're going to type in, and the .x here, right? So normally, the .1 is your router, couple of switches going to be 2, 3, 4 security appliance, right? So I like to, if you work in a very large environment, you would probably start at like 50 or 100. So you can put like 172.16.0.101, right? For your DHCP, DNS will be, 102 and so on, right? So subsequently, we want this host value to be unique to that particular server. Can you put a .10 or a .15? Yeah, in the smaller environment, you might only have like 4 or 5 network appliances. Then you would want, and this is a class B. So it would give you a lot more hosts and a lot more networks compared to the other classes. So what you see is you are going to change this X value to a unique number like 105 or 106 or 110, whatever the number you want. Okay. As long as it's not conflicting. So when this loads up, you're gonna double click. I simply click the link where it says IPv6 or IPv4 assign. You can double click this and it's going to take you to, yeah, I should have given it a little bit more RAM. Sorry, guys. So in the future, give it more RAM for the VM, and you are going to go to properties. And so once I double click the Ethernet option, I'm going to click on property sheet. And what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down, right? Or actually you're going to see in the middle, that's going to be IPv4. Okay. So we are going to configure IPv4 because this is what you're going to see when you are working, right? And remember what we talked about, some of the other protocols, it shows up there. And then we can also configure IPv6, but the purpose is to make sure that our static IPv4 is there. So select that and then click properties. So now we're gonna enter the IP information that we seen on that lab document. So you are gonna select the radio button on the bottom, which is the, let me see if I tap this. Okay, so click that, and then you're gonna click into the field and you're gonna type 172. I don't know why it's super laggy today. Okay. Maybe if I hit tab. So when we boot again, we should probably give it like a little bit more RAM. So 172, right? And then once you automatically fill, it's gonna put your, so it's gonna jump to the next octet. And what we want is we want to be able to type in 172.16.0.110.109, whatever you want there. Okay. But we want to logically think about that in the regular environment where it would be the number that's close to the other servers. 16.0. I don't remember it being this slow though, but. Is it not responding?
Super laggy.
Okay, 1 second, let me check it real quick. What you can do is you can try to, I'm gonna try to shut it down and then I'll give it more RAM and see if it's gonna respond better.
I had to increase the RAM from,
And then the processor,
yeah.
yeah, you have to give it more RAM and processor. So let's do that. If your system is not responding, right, what you can do is you can, I don't like leaving my stuff hanging like this, but let's see. Let's give it more RAM and processor, but you have to shut it down in order to do that. So like I mentioned, right, if you click the Windows button and choose shut down, you got to tell it why you're shutting it down, because we don't usually shut down our system. So if you want faster response, we have to shut it down. So that means that in the regular environment, if you're using a cloud instance to run your server, right, if you pay the minimal, you're gonna get 4 gig or 8 gig of RAM. So 4 gig is definitely not enough for the server. And even with the dual core, single core, that's not gonna be enough. So it's gonna be slow like this. This is what you see, right? My fault. I should have told you guys to add more RAM and more processor.
I give it 10 gigabytes.
Yeah, 8 or higher would be good. Because your Alienware system have 32, right? Okay, so once you close it or shut it down, right? I might have saved it to the state there when I didn't officially shut it down properly. So it powers off. You're gonna make sure it's selected, go to settings. And then what you're gonna do is on the bottom, you're gonna see the base memory. You can change this to like 8,000 for 8 gig, right? That's gonna be tremendously better than the 4 gig we're working with. And then on the processor tab, because see how it's dual core, you should give this quad core, make it 4. So again, right, click on settings. And then go, it would take you to the general on the bottom. You should see the motherboard information. You can type in the amount of RAM that you want to dedicate. And again, this is only if your physical host can accommodate this. So 8,000, and then your processor, you want to give it a quad core. So that should be all right. Right? So once that's done, you save your setting and then you restart the system again, and it should respond a little better. You can give it more. I learned that on these Alienware, like if you want 16, sometimes it's crashy, but it could just be the instructor computer when I was testing that. But anyway, so at home, if you only have 16 gig of RAM, right? You need 4 gig to run your host OS without any app. When you run an additional app, so if you give it 8 gig, you're gonna run kind of lean. So if you have 16 gig, 8 gig for your virtual machine, and the other 8 is gonna be for your host system. Your host system is gonna require more because remember, it's running the software for the VM. So once you reboot again, right, you're gonna click input, keyboard, Control Alt Delete, and then we would be able to log in. So, and you do see that it's still gonna be also laggy. It's not like super, super fast. Okay.
What computer had a processor like this?
I'm sorry?
What type of computer actually had a processor like this that was like so slow?
It was on a dual core. Did you select? It's still slow with the full quad core?
No, I'm asking like, cause how it's simulating, it's insanely slow, right? I'm serious, like, if there was like an actual computer, at some time it was actually this slow.
When you're using a cloud, like let's say if you get a free cloud instance, like I sign up for AWS and get a free stuff, you're gonna get this low. It's gonna give you like, minimum at least a dual core and 4 gig of RAM. So if you want a faster cloud server, so basically you're using someone else's server, if it's free, you're gonna get really slow.
What would you do with the Xbox Cloud gaming?
Yeah, so sometimes you're gonna get slow systems, right? If it's free, a lot of times it's not gonna be fast. Oh. What happened? Okay, so it's a little faster, but not too much faster. So as we were doing, right, we gotta wait for the server manager to load, and it's always slow no matter how much hardware you have to load that. Then once it's loads, you're gonna put in the static IP. Once you have the static IP, then you're gonna install the feature. Okay, so we're gonna put in the static IP. There are multiple ways to do this. You can, as long as you can access the Ethernet adapter, you would be able to do that. And this is probably the easiest way that you will be able to see it right away. Now keep in mind that you should always put a default gateway, right? That's gonna be a .1 for our router by default. And then you're gonna take a screenshot. You should be able to answer this question after you did the last week lecture and lab. So the class of IP address we're using is a class B, right? Because we have 255.255.0.0. And last week lab, we touched on that a little bit. And then why would you use this IP address? Why should we use the IP address as a preferred DNS server IP address? Well, because if you install DNS with the same physical system, right? Like let's say I have a physical computer now and I put DHCP and a DNS role together. It's kind of like having a parent that's holding two roles, right? One person that's doing two roles, then you have the same IP address for that system. So if you have the same physical system for the DNS and the DHCP, you use the same IP address. Okay, so we'll talk about that when we get to it. Okay, so I'm back here again. And then I'm gonna close X this. And then I'm gonna click on local server on the left. And then I'm going to click on this option again. Double click the Ethernet. So it is responding a little bit better that I gave it 8 gig, right? And quad core, because I should have 16 core on these, right? And so if I give it 4, that's good. So I double click the Ethernet to get the property sheet. And then I click on the properties button. And I need to make sure that I go to IPv4, click on properties. And then you're gonna click this option. Use the following IP address. You're gonna type in 172.16.0. I'm gonna use 115. And then if you click the subnet mask, it automatically fills that for you by the default class B. And then you click on the default gateway. So again, 172.16.0.1. That's the first system that we see coming in from the internet. Anybody have any challenges or issue with their VM? Okay. Now the preferred DNS, if I want to fill that here, because let's say that this is one computer, right? I'm gonna make it 2 roles. It's gonna be a DNS and a DHCP, which is sometimes you see the same. So we're gonna do 172.16.0.115 because it's one physical system doing 2 jobs, right? So that should help you answer the question for that step. Now, if you have 2 computers doing 2 separate jobs, then they are different IP, right? The IP address here is different than this one. If it is the same, it's because it's the same physical computer holding 2 roles, right? Because you only have that one adapter. Understand? Any question? So once we have that, we're gonna click OK. Say it again.
You take a screenshot of that or not?
Yeah, if you want. Yeah, you should take a screenshot of that. So we should be able, you can go back. You can go back to IPv4, go to properties, and there you go, right? Yeah, so you should give it more RAM and processor. It's definitely responding way faster before you start it. So you can close it, change the setting, and then restart it again. Oh,
I have to the part where I close it and give it parameters.
okay. So go to general. And on the. Oh, it's still on? Yeah, you just have to check. Just X. It's gonna say power off, okay,
Oh, the questions.
so make sure that ends the process. Now it lets you change it, right? So type in 8,000 for the megabyte. And then go to your processor tab and you're gonna give it 4.
Okay, what's the screenshot?
And billboard too slow, and then click save and then click on the start button for that machine to go again. And it's gonna seem slow at first, but it's gonna give it more core through the software. Okay.
Sorry,
Mhm.
I get my mouse out of the VM.
Oh, to uncapture it. So in the case that if it capture it, I think one way is you can press Control Alt Delete physically on your keyboard and it will release everything. But it should, you can go to the mouse integration. If you can't get it out, you can't go to the mouse integration. I think it's Control Alt or Control Alt and right arrow key, you can try that too. I forgot the combination for, it tells you here, hold on one second. You said mouse, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's something that they haven't enabled when they configure the Windows 10 stuff sometime, or the server itself. So yeah, it auto capture and sometimes it doesn't release it. So you can press the host key combo at any time to uncapture. So the host key is the right control. I'm sorry, the right control. But I learned that if that doesn't work, you press Control Alt Delete and it releases that. But it halts everything else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's working? Okay, good. All right. Okay, so we configure IPv4 again, right? You would go into local server, click on this right here, double click Ethernet, click on properties, go to IPv4, click on its property, enter the IP address that you want, right? That's specified on the lab. And then the DNS, that will be the same physical system that's also running DNS. Then you put the same IP, click OK. And then you can close the property sheet, close that, right? Now, it might not take effect right away. You might need to wait like a minute for it to go, but it should show up there. Now, if you want to do IPv6, you have to go through that same process. We'll leave that for now, right? So that way you can just get the version 4 going. Any questions? Okay, so the first task after you install OS is to put in the static IP address if you configure the server, period. Okay, and it should be schematically thought of when you do that. And so after you had accessed it, take a screenshot. After you change the IP address, put down the answer and take a screenshot. Then what we're going to do is we are going to set up your server. It doesn't take very long. So we are going to install the DHCP server. So on here, right, it tells you that what you're going to do is you are going to go back to the dashboard, which is, it's going to give you the option, right? So Microsoft is designing it to be very user-friendly. You would start here, and then you're going to click Add Roles and Feature. Remember that all of these server functionality is part of a role, and each role would have different features. Some features are for web connection. Some features are for file transfer, so it requires storage. Okay, so again, go back to dashboard and click on Add Roles and Feature. You're gonna go read the information. You're gonna go next, right? You have to be an administrator. You need to have the IP addresses figured out and configure, which we did. You need to have the latest updates, okay? Which we don't have yet. We're gonna go next. Oops. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go next, and it tells me there's only 2 options, role-based or remote-based. We're gonna keep it default role-based. We're gonna go next. Right? And some part here, you might want to pay attention to your lab, and it asks you certain questions. So the next step is we are going to select DHCP, and we're going to add the feature for DHCP. Remember that we're going to make this server into a server that's giving out IP address to the connected systems, right? So it's going to give you an inventory list of what to do. Okay. You see the PIPA address there? You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna default to that. It doesn't have the information translated to this. That's okay, because when we reboot, it's gonna update, right? You see the 169.254, that's an APIPA address. Okay, so that's all right. We're gonna go next. And on the list here, you're gonna click on the option DHCP. So select DHCP. And it tells you that it's gonna add in the administration tools, which is what you want. It's gonna add that to the tools list. And so we're gonna keep all the default options and click add features. And it's that easy, right? So select the HCP, add the feature for the HCP, and then you're gonna go next. And then after that, we're gonna be able to answer the next question. So it's gonna add the .NET framework for the APIs, right? So in the case that if you want to integrate APIs with your server, so here is where you can find your answer. It tells you that DHCP allows server to assign lease IP address to computer. We know that, right? Deploying the server that provides the computer with TCP/IP based network devices and addresses in addition to configuration parameters. The things you should note: number one, you should configure at least one static IP address on this computer, which we did, right? So that's one thing. You need to have a static IP for the physical server. Two, before you install, you need to make sure you plan your subnet, your scope, and your exclusions. So that will give you the IP addresses that you're gonna lease out to other connected systems. Okay, so that's your answer right here. It tells you before you install what you need. And then you're gonna go next. Okay, then after that, we're gonna install. Try using tab key if you can't use your mouse.
We're pressing install after that?
Yeah, click install.
Okay. Oh, shoot.
We have something, I don't have any space.
Once you press install, it's gonna take a few minutes. It doesn't take very long for the HCP to go. Okay, so it's gonna do its thing. What you're gonna do is you are gonna wait a few minutes. Then when it's the full blue bar reaches the end, when it tells you it's finished, you're gonna click close. Okay? Then what we're gonna do is we are gonna create a scope, because installing the role doesn't do anything, right? Once we have the role, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna set our pool of IP address as a scope to be able to give it out. Okay. So it tells me, right, configuration, installation succeeded, everything is done. Now I can click close. It takes like 2 minutes. And you notice it gives me the green status, right, on the server manager that I have the role, right? I also, by default, it's gonna install file and storage services, which is file server, right? Then what we're gonna do is we are going to, there are several ways that you can do this. It's gonna add the DHCP option here, but you can also see that it's also listed under tools now. This wasn't there before we install, right? So every role that you add, it's gonna give you the role management console under the tools. Okay. So we're gonna go to tools and we're gonna click DHCP and we're gonna open up the console so that way we can make a new scope to give out IP address. So we're gonna click on tools at the top, DHCP. And as you notice, it's always gonna be identified with my server name. Ideally, you should have a specific server name for your server instead of using a default.
Let's install it, that's twice. I still have a question. Oh my god, this is my computer, my server. Well, what about that? Which one? B4, B6? We don't know. Hey, look how fast mine. how many gigs did you? The max. Max like the max, you know. Was actually don't do. I guess this was just you look at it. I couldn't that's my stop. Well, yeah, fortunately, but I'm not, there was something about it. That's school. I don't know what that you about. We get a brother, is that so global? So performance has 6 cores, 6 virtual cores, and 10 gigabytes of RAM. But I don't know why it's still so laggy. So maybe the application already. But you go to yours, go to task manager. Oh. Yeah, would you do that, bro? Sure, it's fun. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Go to more details. Go to more details. Go to performance. 6 cores. Go to memory. You gave it 16 gigabytes. Hey. 12 gigabytes. But why is it so light? Well, it's not, but it's not possible. I know. You're missing out. Oh, I open the PHP. Oh, DHCP.
Yeah, increasing it take too long.
Dynamic windows, stop. Yeah, I think it will make it better. Work in line punches. And you put that on the boat.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's all good. I actually don't know. Dude. Go back here.
Huh?
What's the intuition?
Yeah, I don't know why it's taking it out. And on that particular I mean, I understand this is when I installed this, I actually. These are
You forgot here.
not that one, I'm using this. It's the same. All you have to do is just read the because I even what this. Get that.
Oh, that's so. It's subnets, scopes and exclusions. Subnet.
It's gonna take a second to move across that. So.
Not that. This.
It takes a second for it to pick up your caption. And then when you're done, it should take some time. Ideally, we would normally restart, but. Yeah, so it's gonna take a second for it to load this in screenshot, okay?
Can't do that.
So 10. Maybe it's Instagram.
Where's my working on that? Action. All right, it's good.
And let's try some. Everybody install okay?
Well, so it's right here. It's right here. Let him go to that before serving. Not letting. No, that's not there. It's this one. It's not letting you.
Yeah, on your black drive.
I'm not about this. Just be open. Oh, you have to do this. It's not inside that. How will I do that? It's not outside that. It's lagging. So all of us supposed to go. Oh, everything's on there. It's not inside. As I'm good, I'm blocking.
So the folder that you copied previously and then copy another folder. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so, now
Oh, yeah. That's not true.
go back to your local server.
You know.
Yeah, see how it updates now, you can screenshot that, and some questions, right? And you know which class, and then we put in the same DNS as a DHCP, like I said, it functions as two role on one physical system, so. You won't have any different IP. Okay, and then what you do is you just do the next step, which is. After that, you would go. Back to your dashboard on your server manager and start with 14. Okay? All right, so now I have install. I'm gonna expand IPv4, right? And then on here, I'm gonna right click and make a new scope. Okay, so once you install, it's open up DHCP manager from tools. And then go to IPv4, right click and choose new scope, go next. And then I'm gonna just call this like HQ. You can name it whatever the IP address range for that you use it for. So we're just gonna name it, and then I can just say corporate office or corporate branch or whatever you want. And then we're gonna go ahead and go next. Now, this is the IP that you're gonna give out to the other system. So we're gonna go with the range of IP that we're using,
Okay.
right? So what we wanna do is we wanna start with a certain scope. I'm gonna go with the higher scope this time, right? Because my server is at 105, so I'm gonna start at 150 and I'm gonna go to 200. That's the IP address that I'm gonna give out. So we're gonna go 172.16. So the first two octet is the same. And then the next octet is also the same. Oops, sorry. .0. And then the starting IP, I'm gonna start at, let's say 150. We can do 150 and we can give it out all the way to 254 or 200 or whatever you want. So that the scope, I'm gonna give it out to 50 system, for example. So 172.16.0. And the ending is going to be, let's say 250, right? Because we can go all the way up to 254 if you want, okay? Yeah, let's do that.
Connect up to 100 devices.
Yeah, if you go to 250, so 150 to 250, yeah, you can have up to 100 system, right? If I wanted to maximize, I can go to 254, right? So that will be 104 because I started my server later, so I wanted to use, but you can use any range or however you want, depending on the need of the number of systems that you have, okay? And then all of this is gonna be default. We're gonna use the CIDR 16 because that's gonna be for the default subnet mask here. So if you want like a higher or a higher number of system, you can lower this to like 106 to 254, whatever you like, right? And then this is the exclusion. So out of the IP addresses that you have created, what kind of IP that you want for the exclusion. It says exclusion or IP address or the range of IP address that's not distributed by the server. Okay. And the delay is the time duration in which server to delay the transmission of the DC offer. So the IP address things that you want to exclude. So out of from 150 to 254, let's say I want to exclude 151, for example, right? So we can say 172.16.0.151, and I want to exclude that to 155, for example. So 172.168. 16, right? Let's say 155. So it will exclude the first 5 IP because we might use it for dedicated copier or whatever we want, right?
Like printers and stuff.
Yeah, printers, copier, whatever you need. And you can also exclude other range. It doesn't have to be consecutive, right? So you can have like 5 here and then 10 down the line, in the case that you want to reserve that. And then how long is your lease? So when it gives out IP address, by default, most administrator, they do this for like 90 days, 60 days, so that way it doesn't have to. So you can set the days, right, by just changing. I'm just gonna do it for a month. Or longer if you want it to lease longer. Okay. And then for the configuration, it says, do you want to configure the DHCP options now? Right? Remember, we talked about wins, how it would resolve between name and IP. So your router, this is going to be the .1 for the default gateway that you enter. So 172.16.0.1, and you want to add this. Right? So your router, that's gonna be the critical system that's gonna route between the network. So we're just gonna do the .1 for the host at the end. And then go next. Now your parent domain, and I wrote all of the steps down. So as you go through, right, I'm at step 32. The parent domain, it will be the same as the system IP. So we're just gonna go next by default, because we already have the system IP in here. Go next. And then for the Win server, because it is the same exact physical system as the DHCP and the DNS, what we're gonna do is we are just gonna go next by default. Okay. And when you're ready, right, you're just gonna activate the scope that you just created. And you can have many scopes, right? From the same server, you can have scope 1, scope 2, scope 20, right? And that server is gonna give out the IP based on the scope that you specify. So we're just gonna go ahead and activate and then click finish. Okay. And here is where you would see your scope, right? And your address pool that you put in. So if you expand your scope, you can see I did do 150 to 254. So I have 104 IP to give out for that particular scope for my corporate office. And then remember the book talks about reservations. So what you can do is you can reserve, right, specific IP address, where it's always going to assign the same IP address. So for example, I have a finance computer that's always going to have the IP address. So you can set up the reserve by going through the wizard for that. It's really easy. You can specify, let's say 172.16.0. 109 or 159 is always going to be that reserve address. It's like the VIP address, the address that's dedicated for that system. It's not a static IP, but it's always going to give out that same IP, right? Okay. And at that point, take a screenshot. Now, if you have time, you can check out the last few steps to do the IPv6. I have you put in the scope name, and we can do this. It's real quick, right? And the lease, so that way you can see. But I did put down that you can check out your scope options. You can configure. So having a scope doesn't, and activating it doesn't mean that it is authorized. You are going to have to authorize your scope, and it shows you how to do that there. So right click the server, and then we're going to authorize. So in here, here's my server right here. Right click, right? I'm sorry. Go to your scope, and I think you have to activate and then authorize, but you can configure other things by choosing this right here. Hold on a second. It's not letting me. Okay. Server options. Okay. Now, if you don't have time, just finish the IPv4 scope, take a screenshot, and you can probably wrap that up at step 39, right? Which is where after we do that. If you don't see the authorize, that's fine. On the left pane, you should be able to. Now, for the IPv6, if you're curious about that, right? This is the prefix that we're going to use. So same thing. You're going to go here, right click, new scope, go next, right? And then we're just going to call it, like, let's say we're going to call this branch 1. Go next. And then the prefix here, you just need to add in the value that I have given you. So remember that we talked about the prefix with the slash. That's how we subtract that from 128. So we can use 2603 : and then we can exclude like 4, 5, 6, 7. That's just arbitrary, right? And then it's going to be starting at 2603. And what we can do is we can enter the starting IP for exclusion. If, like, let's say if you can do 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, for example, right? A certain IP that you want not to be distributed. Okay, and then you can go next, and then the days, again, we can set it for 30 days, and we can go next, and then we can activate the scope. So it's that simple, right? You can make your scope for IPv4 and IPv6 and then activate it. And then if you look at some of the options in here, right, you can set up reservation. Like I said, that's going to be the same IP that's going to give out to specific system. You can modify your address leases in pool, for example, right? So if you don't want to use it anymore, you can deactivate it and then eventually delete it. But we would only do that if there's no connecting system. You don't want your system to get disrupted. Okay? So now,
Do we add 2 semicolons in the prefix?
yeah. That just indicate a bunch of zeros trailing, remember? Concatenation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we learned that today. When you add the double colon, that's just indicating that there's two sets of 4 zeros trailing.
And the preference was 0.
I'm sorry?
And the preference below prefix, just leave it as 0.
Yeah, you just leave it blank, it's fine. And then if you have certain exclusion, you can add it. I just put an arbitrary number like 4, 5, 6, 7, but and then you can put in the number of days, the valid lifetime, and then you can activate your scope. Take a screenshot, and that's it. And I'm right 5 minutes before time. Did it work or no?
Oh.
What I'll do is I can share the VM with you if you want to run it outside. And then if you want to be able to do that, let me double check. Yeah, so even on mine, you see, even with that, it should be able to run the DHCP. I don't know why you're getting an error. It just tells me that I have this much free. I will strip down the VM and I will create a better one, I guess.
Let's go try to take a screenshot.
I don't think. Are you doing okay?
I'm just following the steps.
Okay.
I'm a little behind, but I'm just following the steps.
Yeah, so when it reaches and tells you it's exceeded, so that's good, click close. And then you're gonna go to tools at the top and click on DHCP.
How to configure DHCP DHCP.
Yeah, so today we learned how to create scope, which is IP pools for the DHCP server after we installed it, right? You learn how to create 2 scope. If you did the second part, that will be version 6 and version 4. You also, through that, know how to exclude IP address, setting up exclusion from the pool. And also if you see the option in reservation. So the book talks about that, or the notes talk about that. So, okay. And then when you're done, just click start, power down, and then shut down.
Yeah, exclusion.
So I'll see if I can share the VM through my Google Drive over the weekend if you want to use the virtual machine outside of class. I'll probably have to upload my other server VM where it would probably be a little bit better in the configuration. So I'll set the settings up. And you notice that when I try to shut it down, it tells me my DHCP is running. Are you sure you want to shut it down? Right. We're gonna shut it down for the end of session. Okay, let me stop.